All right. Thank you so much for sticking around, everybody. We have how many people online do we have at the moment? 195. Okay, so we have almost 200 people online. Which is like good.
Hello.
Good afternoon already for the people in the Philippines, and good morning to all of our speakers, like tip top of the morning, right? Very early morning here in Europe and in the US as well. So I want to go ahead and start off. This panel discussion is going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of remote working. And we have invited experts in our field to talk about this based on experience. They have been dealing with companies doing transitions, from in office to remote to hybrid. And we are going to be talking all about the challenges that they have went through. What were the things that they did to fix, or I guess to go through these challenges to make things better. So I'm going to go ahead and do the introduction from right to left. I'm going to start with Gonzalo, Tyler, and then Chase. Okay. So Gonzalo Hall, like, oh my God, there's so many things that I could say. Many amazing things that you have been doing in Europe, right? Remote Europe, remote Portugal, and now you're bringing digital nomads into Madeira for it to be a nomad paradise for remote workers at the moment. So welcome to the talk. We are so glad that you're here. I know you also personally you work with companies to do consulting about their remote transition, and so we're gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about that. Tyler Salhorn. I was just sharing the story about how we use Hubstaff in the Philippines, and most of the Filipinos in the group as well are probably using Hubstaff as their time tracker for their online work. So we're very familiar with the Hubstaff. So Tyler is basically leading a fully remote team of customer success and customer support, all stuff from Melbourne to Seattle. He is working for Hubstaff. You are the director of customer support. I'm saying that right? Okay, yes. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And then we go to Chase. Chase, you are with Doist. You're the head of business development at Doist, and you have been assisting. I know that you have been doing some e-learning as well. Like you do the talks, you do consultation. I don't know if you are doing consultation, but I know that you are very open and willing to share your knowledge with remote companies, remote individuals. One of our true advocates, remote work advocates out there. You will see Chase everywhere. So I couldn't think of a better panel to invite than these three guys in here. So let's guess. I would like the three of you to do a reintroduction. Tell us how amazing you guys are, because I wouldn't be inviting you if you weren't amazing, and I feel like I didn't do justice. So please take the floor. Good luck.
No, I think you did very well, actually. Just, yeah, I'm Gonzalo Hall. I help companies implementing remote work. It looks like I also help governments attracting remote workers and digital nomads. This is a fairly new project. I'm in love with remote work for a while now. And to be honest, I just learned from the other two guys. There's actually the other two guys and the other girl that are on the call. So just a pleasure to be around them all the time. And yes, at running basically remote. Just to introduce a little bit of what is remote Europe and remote Portugal. Remote Europe is just a job board for remote jobs in Europe, because I felt that there is this thing where all the remote jobs around that we could see, they said in the end in small letters US only. Well, I don't like the word only, so I fight it back. Now it's EU only. And Remote Portugal is just a content website that I'm doing with some friends. We have a listing of co-workings. We are launching services and everything in between. Future of Work conferences. Well, I organize conferences, maybe too many conferences about the future of work, which is right now about of remote work, start to be also about VR. Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, make sure that we talk about VR in this new conversation. And yeah, just a big fan of June, just a big fan of Chase, and just a big fan of Tyler as well. So just happy to be here.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yes, I am the director of customer experience at Hubstaff. We help companies profitably manage projects and teams. Obviously, as June mentioned, like Hubstaff has been around, helping enable remote work, long before the pandemic. But we're a little sad that this shift has been the result of such tragedy, and disruption of business. And we're hoping that we're helping to enable the next version of things, where we're going to be looking at the opportunity for remote working to become a sustainable thing for governments, for companies, for individuals, right? That we're going to be able to have the opportunity for people to be able to find employment, find work in a way that is decoupled from their location, right? And helping to solve problems like gridlock in Manila, right? There's a certain amount of disconnection that happens just by moving persons to the place where they can work. Well, how can we solve that problem? Well, let's put the transition of where we're working into the internet, because bits and bytes move a lot faster and than do people into the places where they can work. So that's what we're working on, and pleased to be working with June and Chase and Gonzalo and the Department of Trade there in the Philippines on this problem together.
That's good. Chase.
Yes, thank you. I'll also echo the sentiments. It's a pleasure to be here joining the stage with these guys and you, June. Big fan from afar, and have gotten to know you all through some of our various interactions in the remote work world, which we were just talking about is kind of smaller than we might think. So yeah, it's really great to be here. And as June mentioned, I'm the head of business development at Doist. We're the team behind Todoist and Twist, which are two tools that some people out there might be familiar with. But we're a fully remote team. We're about 85 people in 35 different countries and spread across all time zones, and have been doing remote work for over 10 years. I personally have been working remotely my whole career for about 12 years in a couple of different organizations, from like a hybrid model to what we have here, which is like fully location independent. And then I also do some consultations for companies transitioning to remote, or individuals and teams that want to embrace new remote work practices and things like that. So I'm just a big fan of the opportunities that remote work can bring, and a big fan of optimizing remote work, not just figuring out how to do it on the fly, but really being intentional about how to do it correctly, using the right tools and practices, and making sure that this wealth is spread globally. So that's why I love participating in things like this, and I'm happy to be here. So thanks again, June.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that. Yes. I love that you mentioned that, implementing this properly and not just doing it on the fly, because I think a lot of the people are just doing that. Like, I see you all three nodding like, yes, this is right. Just saying something right. So basically, let's go ahead and go into our questions. So you guys have been in the forefront of change, right? Even before the pandemic. And we know for a fact that there was a lot of pushback regarding remote work with the adoption of this way of working from the company side, especially from the management. So what do you think? Why do you think that was the case? What was the cause of the pushback?
I'll go first. One of the things that is a part of office culture is a there's kind of some unsaid expectations of attendance and appearance, and so much that is read through body language, and what do you do when that's gone, right? Especially from a management perspective, right? How do I replace the things that I learned, through those informal, communication channels? How do I know that people are working, right? well, it turns out that people can work from home. I mean, that was never the issue, right? It's the, okay, there's this continuum of trust, and where is the threshold between, being certain that, oh yeah, we are getting work done, here's all the things that they're doing. Here's the deliverables that have always been something that we've been measuring. And, okay, that, here's their attendance, because, obviously I'm a Hubstaff person. So like, here's the data that goes with the time that they've tracked, those sorts of things. Like, magically we can say, oh yeah, there it is. There's the work that they've done. And now we've kind of crossed the threshold collectively, right? To say, okay, not just this one worker or this, business unit, right? We're saying, here is this whole sector. Here is this whole, company that turns out we didn't need to be spending this money on an office. We could, spend that money on a tool that kind of like does the proof of work, or not. Like, it might just be that we only need the deliverables, right? There's a, like I say, there's a whole continuum of decisions and ideas to be, considered. And I think that's the thing that, Chase mentioned right away, is that, like, being intentional and deciding how you're going to do it is really the key, right? And then, then it becomes just regular kind of like good management practice. Inspect what you expect, right? Those are the things that kind of come along, and to say, okay, we're not working from an office anymore, but the things that were always true about business remain so. And we just need to make sure that we find, our handholds as we climb this mountain together. Okay, here's the next step, and let's keep iterating forward and find what's going to work for us.
Really good points.
Yeah, I think it was, in my opinion, the reason why remote work was not the normal before this. It's just basic human fear of what we don't know. It was, for me, that basic. Even with all the data supporting this, with guys like Doist, like GitLab, showing us the data, or even with the companies showing, hey, we have 40% increase in productivity, so you'll make more money with less expenses. Even with all this data, the truth is we are humans, and humans fear what they don't know. So I really believe that the fear was stronger than data for all these years, and this is what was preventing people. Because we had COVID, suddenly it's not a question. You had to test it out. And after you test it out, after you see it works, you lose the fear, because suddenly you see, oh, wait, this works. So I don't have to fear this. Now I just have to learn about it. And I truly believe that our next fight for us that are trying to push remote work forward is to make people understand that this is not remote work. And this is very important. This is like a forced telecommuting thing where most people have to stay inside home. And I hate to work from home, which is always curious. So yeah, I think it was just fear. And I think now we have this really big task in hands to convince people that this is not remote work, and to teach them how to properly remote work. And this is where Chase, Doist are the great example, because these guys are doing this forever.
Yeah, I mean, I will kind of second what Tyler and Gonzalo said. I think people are inherently kind of afraid of change, and switch forces are very, there's a lot of friction when you talk about switching from an office culture to a remote culture. Like, if you're leading a company and you've been in an office culture for 20 years, 30 years, like, to make that transition without being forced to is a lot to ask, especially if things are going along just fine. So there's a lot of pushback against transition when things are going fine. And when you're forced to do that, and you're even, just like Gonzalo said, despite all the data telling you otherwise, you say, well, for us, this works. And now people are being forced to try something different, and pushing through the friction, and realizing that on the other side of that hill is quite a nice green pasture of work. And I think, like Tyler alluded to this, when I talk with companies that are transitioning to remote and looking for advice, like, almost always the first question, or like one of the 2 or 3 questions that almost always comes up immediately is, how will I know my employees are working? Like, how will I track their work? And like, if I can't see them, I can't trust them. And this is so unfortunate that this is the way our mindsets go naturally. There are tools to do this, Hubstaff being one of them. There are tools to help you with this. But B, there's like so much data out there that says that actually employees sitting in an office, like putting a butt in a seat, isn't really working. You're only working generally a couple hours per day in the office. So for some reason, we change our mindset when we think about remote work, and we think, oh, well, if I can't see them, then I need to, how am I going to know that they're working? And the data points to the fact that people actually will work much harder. And probably your biggest concern is that they're going to work too hard, work too often, and burn out in a remote setting. So this is actually what, as from a management standpoint, this becomes your bigger concern, not are they working enough?
How ironic is that everyone is fearful? Oh my God, they will not work, and so oh my God, they are burning out.
Yeah. This is the irony.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's exactly that, what Gonzalo said. It's like, it's the fear of the unknown. They didn't know. And then if it's, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Like, look, I distinctly remember, like I was having this conversation with somebody from the pharmaceutical. Like, their business has been running for 60 years the way it is, the way it was. And there's no reason for us to change because what we are doing has been tried and tested, and yours is very new. We don't know if it works, right? So there was no incentive for them to try it out until the pandemic happens. And it's a bad circumstance that this is how it all started, but at the end of the day, we kind of like, okay, they know it works. They had to try it because there was no other option. And so now it works. Now you can go ahead and make a decision whether, you want to keep it or not. So, by the way, Tyler, you have 2 fans already in the chat. They're Hubstaff talent using Hubstaff. Yeah, Hubstaff.
We're proud to be a part of the Filipino economy. Long before there was a shift towards remote work broadly. I'm proud to have team customer experience team members in the Philippines. They're some of our very best performing members of our team. So we're very proud to be a part of the Filipino economy.
Right. Nice. Okay. So on to our second question. So I think all 3 of you know that the most of the time when we talk about remote working, most common disadvantage that is cited in almost all of our conversation is it revolves around trust and connection. Like, oh, I will not be as well connected to my team. And again, like, how will I know if they're really working or not? And especially from the management side. So how do you suppose that they tackle these issues, especially around the connection part?
I have an unpopular opinion just to start before Chase tells you how to fix it, and Tyler. Yes. I have a strong opinion about this because basically what happened in the last 50 years, is that people told you that the office needs to be the center of your social life. And this is not only for work, it's for your life. And this came because people had to move from their villages and their cities to the big city. They don't know anyone. So the office becomes actually the social infrastructure for most of their lives. Their friends are in office, etc. And that's why people, for example, in Portugal, I saw reluctant to go out of the office because they miss their friends, because that's the only friends they have in town. And now they are suffering because they have no other friends. As soon as this stops to be true, as soon as we don't have to leave our cities and our villages to go to the big city where we don't know anyone to make friends, people will be much happier first. And the office will, I strongly believe that the office will stop being a place where we'll seek for friends and we will seek for validation. I think the virtual office and your company will be the place where you do work. Well, you can really make friends as well, but you don't need to. It's not like I don't make friends, so I don't like my job. It will be much more like I do my work, I have good relationships, I actually love the team, these guys are smart. So I think this whole idea that the office has to be the center of your social life will completely change. And now that I gave my unpopular opinion, these guys will tell you how to fix it.
I actually would have said something very similar to start my spiel. So I won't regurgitate everything that Gonzalo said, but I also am a big fan of breaking down this mindset that the office has to be the center of your social life. I think there's some unnecessary pressure that comes. I can't speak for, I think this changes a lot from culture to culture as well. So I can't speak for every culture, but I'm from the US, and in the US there's a strong unity around the office, and you go to office happy hours and you have office lunches, and these are forced friends. Like in the end, it's like you didn't choose these people, like HR chose these people and put them in a room together, and now you're forced to kind of hang out together, and that's the cultural norm. And I mentioned before that I've worked in a hybrid setting where I was a remote employee, sometimes coming into an office where this was sort of the norm. And I was even then like kind of taken back by like, why is like I have friends outside of work, I have a social life outside of work. You can follow Gonzalo and see the work that he's doing as a digital nomad in the community that's created amongst people that actually have stuff in common outside of work. And this is really healthy because it helps separate work life from your real life, from your social life. And it's helpful for us to have a balance there and not to have all the energy in one space. So that's one side of the coin, is that like the office doesn't have to be the source of your social life, and you can have a social life outside of this. In fact, you should. But the second piece is that like there is a place for having interconnection with your teammates, and that is totally possible in a virtual world. And so we could go into specifics. I'm sure we all have some ways for doing that. And June, if you want, we can go into more detail on that. But the point is that like maybe you take a step back. Maybe you can't have 100% of what you have in the office setting, as far as like having a deep connection with your colleagues. But I would say you can get really close, 90 or 95% of the way there, by hosting events online and by occasionally getting together, perhaps during more normal times. It's possible to have a fully remote culture and still build bonds and trust with your teammates. That is for sure.
So just to kind of underscore all of the things that have been said so far, even beyond this particular question, is that there is inertia. Human behavior, business behavior has the same kind of inertia that physical bodies do, right? An object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? You can tell that I've, like once upon a time I was a school teacher, right? I'm using the book definition and going to be repeating it until you learn it, right? And like when I was a school teacher, right? That's as co-located environment as it gets, right? Bells to tell you to go to a mandatory meeting with another 35 people on the hour, every hour, right? Every day, right? And there being a certain amount of like, oh, okay, I didn't, speaking of Chase's idea, like randomized choice happened to pick who you're going to spend your time with for the next, 50 minutes, right? And I still tell people, that it feels like I'm taking a day off of school every day, right? This is a second career for me in software and software support. And I think, I did literally have to take a day off of work to have lunch with my spouse, right? I did that yesterday, kind of on accident, right? I think those are the types of things that, I'm a dad, I'm a youth sports coach, right? I'm a whole set of things before I am, a worker, right? And I think that the more we say that every day that we work in an office is on purpose, is intentional. Like I chose this, right? Even as business leaders, even as, government, like structure, planners, right? Like, what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep doing what we've been doing? Or are we going to choose tomorrow? Are we going to choose today the things that we, want to have for ourselves, right? To be intentional, to make a decision, to be considered, right? Really is like something that is kind of comes along for the ride when you do things in a remote space, because there's, the framing of your question even, right, is like, well, prove it, remote work, can you replace these things? Well, are those things even present in an office culture, right? And I think what Gonzalo and Chase have kind of suggested is that maybe not. Maybe not, and that, there is an opportunity for us to choose something better, even if it is to be in the office, that like, okay, these are the things that we're going to do, like in reference to the pandemic, but also in reference to the experience of working remotely for, 12, 16 months, right? Like what, how are we going to learn from this? How are we going to take this moment and bring back the office? If the office is the right thing for your company, bring it back in a way that honors the experience of these last 16 months, or, however long it happens to be, right? That needs to be something where we're not just kind of letting the objects in motion tend to stay that way, right? That like, even if we are to stay remotely, like doing it in a way that like honors the contribution of those that are in your organization, right? Inside of their roles, outside of their roles, inside of the organization, outside of their organization, right? And to be considerate of that people are, not just working for you, but like they're people outside of the work that they do. And like, thank you for showing up and working for us, right? I think that is something that remote working kind of like is, in the streets waving the flag for. But I think it's something that we need to be, recognizing that was always the case. Just sometimes we ignored it.
I agree. Real good points. And just to tie it in, with this topic we're in, the connection and the trust and around the organization, they think that it's all, being back in the office will resolve their problem. What's happening now is companies are leaning more towards going hybrid, right? Whether that's remote first, remote friendly, or whatever. The fact is that they are leaning towards that, and people keep on saying that maybe hybrid is actually the future of work. And many companies are still undecided, are still on the fence on that. But what's your opinion on it, about going hybrid and not being able to decide on which way to go?
My experience is sorry, I'm just jumping in here. My experience of working was, like I say, in as co-located as it gets at a school where there's like buses to bring the children to the location, right? We are. And then obviously Hubstaff is a fully distributed. We have no headquarters. I joke that our headquarters is Cancun, Mexico, where we last had our company retreat. We're fingers crossed that we're going to have a new headquarters when we all come together. Hopefully somewhere, maybe it's Madeira. I hope that we have the opportunity to visit Gonzalo or any of the other places where there's all of the amazing kind of facility for those types of interactions to happen. But I think that's going to be something, when you think about, okay, it doesn't have to be either or, right? So some version of hybrid seems to be a thing that people are considering, and I think that's really possible for organizations that already had a geographic kind of time zone, or even metropolitan area like set of people working for it. But I'm wondering about those already global, right? Organizations, or those organizations that are just starting today or started during the pandemic, right? What are the choices that they're going to make? Because the companies of the future, the companies of what's going to happen next, are not the ones that are operating today, right? But there's going to be a hacker house in Madeira that transforms the European Union's entire economy, right?
Working on that.
Right. I mean, but I mean that's the thing that is the we're in this kind of remote working community online. The thing that you're seeing people doing is self-organizing the hacker houses that used to be in a basement of a VC's had like a place for everybody to sleep and then code and crushing the code, and it was just kind of like a co-located ugly sort of version of things. I wouldn't they be served much better to be in a place that had a place to relax and like what wasn't completely consumed with that all their interactions might be online, that like there might be ways for them to come together for quarterly or biannually, right? Or whatever the version of like when do you come together and when do you stay apart and when do you like those things are all in the air, and it is scary to be thinking about all those things at once. But I think that flipping it around, June, you've got Automattic coming, right? Their idea is instead of traveling for 48 weeks out of the year, working from home, like for a month, flipping it around and saying, okay, 4 weeks a year, we're going to come together and be together and travel. Right. And the other time it's up to you. Where do you want to work? Right. I mean, I think that kind of mentality is going to be really, really attractive to workers. And then also, like we've been talking about, people are productive in that environment. So that's going to be very attractive to companies as well.
I will just add that I think like hybrid work has become like a popular, like the hybrid setup has become a popular word amongst the mainstream, and then therefore like it's become sort of like a negative buzzword amongst people in the remote community and trying to like challenge it in a way. And I think we should probably temper that a little bit, because I think the real negative possibility is that people just assume hybrid is the easy, safe way to go and don't go about it. I used the word intentionally earlier, like, but just to use it again here, like, if you don't go about hybrid work intentionally, it can be a real disaster. So like, having had some experience in that world versus like a fully location independent world, I can say that like just a couple things that you want to watch out for if hybrid is the way that you're going to go, where you have some people in an office at least some of the time and some people working remotely, is to really be intentional about the tools that you're using and the practices you put into place so that one piece of the pie doesn't get left out of the equation. So it's very easy if you have a lot of people in an office, but people working remotely, for a lot of decisions to be made in silos. It's very easy for your tools that you use to be set up to kind of cater to the people in the office and then not set up for the remote workers. And it is hard to find that balance. Like if you're using, if you do a lot of things in conference rooms, for instance, but you have people working remotely who have to call into those conference calls, like their experience is very different than the people that are sitting in that room all together. So how are you going to make that call work for everybody? If you extrapolate that out across hundreds and thousands of employees, productivity can really take a hit. So just there's a lot more that can be said about this. Like I know we don't have all the time in the world, but I guess I would just sum it up by saying, like, I think hybrid can work. It's probably the most likely scenario for most companies in the next phase of this transition. And the point is just to really give some real thought to how you're going to make it work for everybody.
Yeah, I think hybrid is just for me, it's just the MVP. Like, what can we do that is enough for some people that want to work remotely, but don't risk too much if this thing goes wrong? We can actually have a plan for when it goes wrong. And that's normal for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are always checking how can they mitigate risk. So I think a hybrid is a good way to mitigate risk. It is a lower risk option because, again, if things go wrong, let's just call people to the office again. Let's just hire more office space. I do think that one thing that was not said, I do think that if hybrid will work, first, hybrid is much harder than fully remote or fully office. It's just harder because, again, like Shay said, there is 2 employee experiences. There is too many. It's like managing 2 companies that somehow need to work together. And sometimes the 2 companies have teams in common, which is a little bit scary. But I think it's possible to make it happen. But I do believe that you need to throw some money at it by hiring a person that will be responsible for the whole process and the daily life, basically. I do think if you try to put HR only in charge of this, it will fail. I don't say it will fail, but it will not work properly. You'll have some issues. I do think you have to need one person. It can come from HR, but they need to learn more about processes, about documentation, and that's completely possible. There is great courses around already. But without a person responsible for all this, I think it will fail. I feel like there is a big chance that not like fail and people will go away, but fail like process will not be okay. Communication will not be okay. People will start burning out. People that are remote will start complaining that they are missing out and they will have FOMO from the office. But if you have a person that is overlooking all this, and trust me, this is a full-time job. This is even a 2-person full-time job because it's documentation, it's communication, it's processes, it's culture, are the people remote? How can we give perks for people that are remote that are more or less the same from the people that are in the office, because in the office you have the coffee, you have the ping pong machine, you have the PlayStation. How can we give this experience for the people that are remote? So there's a whole set of things that you have to think twice for office and remote. And trust me, your HR will burn out if you put this on them, because they have no idea as well. They are still learning. So I think with this person in charge, for the whole experience, hybrid can work. Can it thrive though? I think to thrive, to be like a very good, well-oiled machine, I think it's hard. I think it's really hard. I think it's a lot of work. It can work well. I don't think it can thrive and be amazing like fully remote or like full office is right now. I think it can be really challenging, but it can work well. And if you want to mitigate risk, I think that's a good option.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, it's really difficult for you to have those two sets, of people, like the people who are in the office and people who are, remote. And I've been in that situation wherein you are the only person in the conference, right? And then they are in the conference room and they're looking at you like that. And eventually they start socializing and chatting and whatnot, and they complete that they forget that you are there. And it happens, because this is something that we do unconsciously, and talking and interacting with people that is in your presence is going to be a lot easier than it is when talking to somebody who is just in the square box. So I completely agree with Gonzalo that you need to have a head of remote, like a person who will be championing, or maybe even not a head of remote, but you need to have somebody in charge of it, not just like somebody from your HR that would be like a sideline for them, because this is going to be a full-time job, and somebody needs to think about what it is for how it will benefit the entire country, and not just kind of like let's just wing it sort of plan, because that's what people are doing now. We're just going to go ahead and give them laptops, we're going to send them computers and just have them work from home, and or we can give them laptops and we can call them here whenever we want to. So it's kind of difficult to maintain the culture, to have that seamless sort of relationship, and that it will have all of the employees will be an equal platform if you do have the hybrid setup, right? Okay, so guys, we are a little bit over time, so we don't have any time for Q&A. But what you have shared so far, there's plenty, and we are getting comments from the audiences here that they've learned so much from these talks. So it's really good. It's really good. We're getting really good feedback, and I want to thank you for coming in, for speaking, for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. And I am quite sure that we will be, if anybody wants to reach out to you, get the services, for example, any consultations or whatnot, we are going to leave your LinkedIn profile in the chat, and send them the information as well later, so it will be easier for them. But I think that is about it. I am going to go ahead and close the panel officially, and we will be handing over the talk to our friend Alo from the Department of Trade Industry. He's going to be doing the closing with our Assistant Secretary Jean after our discussion. All right. So once again, thank you, and bye, guys.